Hey, it's Joe, and welcome to another episode of the Test Guild Automation Testing Podcast. And today we'll be talking with Chris Trimper all about Confessions of an AI Testing Skeptic. This was taken from an online event I did with Chris a few months ago for Cobaton, where he shared his team's journey to adopting AI practices and technologies in testing. At the end of it, did he become a believer in AI automation or not? Listen all the way to the end to find out. If you don't know, Chris Trimper is an enterprise QA automation architect at Independent Health. He has over 16 years of experience dedicating most of his time to adding efficiencies in the testing process through functional test automation. He currently is the test automation architect for his QA team, and he leverages various tools and techniques for functional automation and performance testing. And he has the opportunity to speak at various conferences on software testing and monitoring. And over the past few years, he's begun to adopt forms of AI in the toolbox of efficiencies in testing. You don't want to miss this episode. Check it out.
Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Trimper from Independent Health, and I want to talk to you today about how I evolved from an AI skeptic to a convert. So a little bit about me first. For those of you who don't know me, and my name is Chris Trimper. I am the QA automation architect at Independent Health in Buffalo, New York. I've been in the software testing space for around 15 years, doing functional test automation for the latter 12 plus. I've had the opportunity to be a speaker at a variety of test and test automation centric conferences. I perpetually look at the testing process to add efficiencies, whether it be through automation or other processes as well. And a little bit of fun. I am an avid Pokemon trading card player and mentor at our local Pokemon club. So where do we start in the journey with AI? Where was I a skeptic, and how in the heck did I become a convert? So my early feelings about AI is my knee-jerk reaction said there was just no place for AI in the software testing space. I just didn't think it was going to work. I didn't think that it was ever going to take the place of testers. You may laugh at me now because I said I've been doing test automation for a while, and those manual testers said that test automation would never, fill in for them. So that's all fair in game. But I just didn't feel that the computers were going to be able to make the decisions to do things in an intelligent way where we still adhere to standards, we still adhere to best testing practices, we adhere to requirements. That was just my feelings about it. I just didn't think it was going to be something that would be beneficial for me. Alexa in my house? Sure, maybe. But I just didn't see it in the testing space. Conference after conference, webinar after webinar, there was this underlying tone that in the software development space, AI was going to come. It was going to be our savior. It was going to solve all of our problems. It was going to help us out. And, whether I wanted it to or not, AI, it happened. And there's a bunch of areas that happened throughout our lives. In the software testing space, it certainly had a presence with things related to data, for generating data, coming up with data variations, combinations, permutations, all that jazz. It had the means to automatically create some tests based on stuff, let's say. I don't want to get too tool agnostic right now. Coverage, certainly lots of AI and intelligent robotic processes were boasting the ability to help us with code coverage, help us with our path coverage, help us understand our gaps in testing. There was so many solutions talking about self-healing and remediation, fixing our locators, fixing our means to interact with our applications, or automatically correct and not allow for certain types of classifications of errors to even exist. So, certainly there were a lot of conferences or webinars or sessions that we would attend that would talk about AI. There are really two key ones that stood out to me, and I thought, it's worth putting in my back pocket just for a someday. One of them was about scripting. And this particular session talked about how automation could be enhanced with AI so that we could have an easier means to understand the interface. We could have an easier way to interact with the interface. There was boasting that eventually there would be a merger of manual tests and automated tests, and really the language would become one and the same. Kind of how certain types of languages allow us to feed into automation for like a gherkin or cucumber type of thing, there'd be a way to give an AI engine instructions that would be inherently understood. Another bit of sessions that I found really interesting and worth noting for the future was visual validations. Doing visual validations where you're doing a pixel by pixel, kind of that bitmap-esque comparison, and ways in which we could more intelligently look at screens, look at what was rendered on the screen, and focus on, okay, there might be some textual changes there, but that appears to be the same screen, the same layout, the same type of content that we've had in the past, and we're trending towards looking good, or maybe we're trending off pattern, and now all of a sudden the screens that we're delivering to our customers, to our end users, aren't quite what they used to be, and a reason to raise some red flags. So then what happened? About 2.5 years ago, it was announced that the independent health mobile app called MyIH was going to be brought from a solution that we hired out to get built to something that we were going to take in-house and have far more control over it, as well as the ability to deliver features at a faster pace. So that meant all of a sudden we were going from some integration testing in mobile app to full-fledged testing, lots of features coming down quick. Wow. So I thought, I guess maybe those things I put in my back pocket for a rainy day, they might come to life. Maybe it's time to step up our game and give this AI thing a stab. Well, much like any project that we take on, got to have some goals. So goal number one, as I said, this was a mobile initiative, is I didn't want to have different scripts for different devices, different OSs, different screen sizes, other stuff like that. We just want one script. We have one set of interactions, we have one script. That's how it worked with browsers. IE and Chrome and Firefox and Edge. We only need one script to drive that. There's no reason we need to have different scripts, different objects, different locators. We just want one script. It needs to be easy to script. It needs to be simple to script. It needs to have low overhead. We just needed something that we could build, work with, interact with, and have our automation scripts, but without having some huge curve to get to it. It had to be easy to work with. Especially because we were going from no mobile to lots of mobile. So we were definitely looking for a benefit there. And lastly, easy maintenance. Maintenance and maintenance consideration should be something that we think about for really any automation. So there's no difference here when looking to say, hey, maybe this AI thing might help us out. So step one is looking at functional automation. We had those two presentations. So that first one talked about scripting. We're going to give this scripting thing a try. Now, I'd like to do one, let's say, looking back fundamental type thing. We have a test case. Overly super simple test case, test step actually that everybody's got. Enter, somebody's username into username field. No matter if we are manual, if we are record and playback, if we're looking at keyword view, driver-based, AI codeless, irregardless of what we do, we have the very basic fundamentals of an object, a user element that we have to interact with, a means in which we're going to interact with it, a command, an argument, whatever you might, or actually be a command, and then the variable, an optional variable, like if we're clicking on it, we don't need any details probably, but when we're doing something, what are we using? So these three key things are a factor with near any automation or really testing that we would do. Now that first item, the username field, we now have some new ways that have opened up to us as we open up our doors to AI that we have for interacting with it. And there's an AI engine that we can interact with, that we can adopt, that we could use in our library of tools where using computer vision and OCR, we can interact with. OCR is something that's been around for years. Anyone in the any field working with scanning forms has had OCR in their industry's work belt for a long time. And it's just a technique that's continued to grow and grow and grow. A really great thing about OCR when you're talking about the interface is it can be textual or it can be graphical. It doesn't matter. Characters are characters. Computer vision is something that's continually evolving, continually changing, and something that we could adopt to understand icons, fields, application components, industry standard icons, custom icons, and a way to interact with those as their visually rendered selves. Now, this taught us really quickly that we had to think differently about testing. So before we had objects and code and, if you were in the web world, HTML DOM and different elements, divs and spans and other things. In the mobile world, a plethora of different controls, whether you're hybrid native or something in between. That was the way we used to think about things. We were diving into the code. We were interacting with it. We needed to understand it. We understand properties and various things, hierarchy to work with things. Now, we're finding ourselves with the user experience. We are looking at the rendered content. We are shifting the way that we're thinking about testing and finding it that we are actually doing something that's more user experience, more user testing. So it's a way for us to interact with the application in ways that we hadn't before. We find ourselves testing like a user. So we're getting some really cool stuff here. We're able to interact with the application in a natural way, but also in a way where we don't have to define objects and object properties and things. We can say things like, we have created an account as a header. Is it there? The computer vision and OCR can determine that. We can understand icons. We can enter values into fields, and the OCR and computer vision can understand them based on the understanding of fields, and that a field has a particular label or identifier, and working on entering values. And we just kind of almost talk to the AI and interface with that AI to be able to have that interaction. And I hinted that we're getting closer to the user experience. So let's look at, for a minute, let's take a pause and look at, what do users do, but what don't they do? And as I say, what don't they do, you're going to think, wait, that's traditional automation. There's an opportunity to grow. So users click buttons, they type into forms, they select options, they just use applications. They don't interact with HTML elements. They don't decipher locators. They don't inject data into fields. They don't inject JavaScript or do weird, crazy things like that. They don't have to have hooks in applications, and they don't have to measure the XY coordinates of something to understand its relation. It understands, well, these are next to each other, they're below each other, they're grouped together, and I can understand them in that way. So, might be asking me, Chris, what did you find as benefits to us? You're talking about all these things. Great, that's lovely and all, but what did it get you? So it got us reduced maintenance. Using AI-based locators made it so that we really only have to have changes when the application changes, when the user experience changes. We've had developers have to change out backend components, perform upgrades, change the way in which the fields are rendered. We've even had them change entire mobile development frameworks. And as long as the user experience is the same, which it pretty much has been, we've had little to no maintenance. As you can imagine, by describing things the way in which a user describes them, by the way that interacts with them, we have a lot easier creation. I don't have to worry about the properties of an object. I don't have to worry about what type of HTML element. Sorry, it's easier to talk about web. I know we're talking about mobile here, but I don't care about what kind of element it is. Like in the web world, div, span. I don't care. It's just a container. It's a visual container. Our automation now has the ability to act more like a user. And I kind of put the no worries in here. It's kind of silly and comical. As we're entering nicer weather and happier days for everyone, no worries is just this nice trend. And frankly, we get to worry a lot less about things. One day the development team came to us and told us that they were changing out the framework from framework A to framework B, totally different tooling. And that's what our mobile app was going to be built on. Wasn't worried about it. And we really didn't have anything to be worried about for it. So that's all the stuff in functional automation. Let's talk about step 2. There's that second presentation that I mentioned, and this is visual validations. So let's talk a little bit about some mobile testing woes that are brought about. So let's put our thinking hat on. We've got to validate UX stuff. We've got to validate the layout. And I'll just put it in air quotes. We've got to validate all the pretty things. That sends me into an absolute panic surge. Automating that stuff is just preposterous. We always have lots of options. In this case, I had 3 options. Could do nothing. Could say, that's out of scope for automated testing. We'll just have to have that be part of user testing. It's an option, right? We could also say, we're going to script all this stuff. Could do that. Find a better option. As you can imagine, doing nothing, it's really not an option. I mean, it is, but it's like, what's for dinner? I don't know. Could just not have dinner. Kind of want dinner. So let's look at what scripting all the things is to kind of walk through our options here. So we just have a screen. It's for creating an account. And from a validating the user experience, validating the layout, validating the look and feel, all those categories that are under visual validation, there could be a lot. And we'll just kind of fly through them pretty quickly. There's a progress bar. There's a title. There's just so many things about the title. There's its entire value. Maybe we care about its styling and its theme. There's just each one of these little dots I'm going to have on the screen could have one-to-many validations there. We have fields. Fields have labels and styles and looks and feel, and there's a bunch of them. We have, that little underline there, that's the look and feel to it. That's a whole bunch more. We have this checkbox. That the checkbox is indeed something we want to verify that it's rendered, that it's got the particular look and feel. Wouldn't it be silly if that was purple or blue or green? I mean, we wanted the same style. There's some terminology, and then there's links that we have that need to be visually distinguishable as links. Pretty sure most of you are thinking, hey, he had that option 3, find a better option. Yeah, I like the idea of finding a better option too. Again, this chat today is about our journey. So I want to take you down the journey and talk about what we are looking at for visual validation. We wanted speedy results. Again, when we're doing test automation, we want to have something that's relatively quick. We don't want to go backwards to go forwards for the most part, unless it's justifiable. In this case, it just wasn't. We wanted something that didn't bring a lot of stress into our lives. We wanted something that wasn't going to be this beast to have to implement and to have to do a lot of work with. We wanted something that had an easy way to make decisions. And let's face it, any time you're doing testing, people are like, well, what did it look like? Well, when you're doing visual validation, when you're talking about the rendered elements, those pictures, they're worth just 1,000 words. They're great. So we've adopted visual validation. We have had speedy results. We have had it be relatively worry-free. We're able to trend out what our application looks like and what it has looked like. And as failures come up, we can easily revert back and see what it was, and we can visually see what that failure is. And we're able to find a whole bunch of stuff. So the means of testing is one thing, doing the things. But what about the results? Well, certainly we want to have the same caliber of results that we've had in the past, but what if this opened up an avenue for us to have a new classification of defects found? And as you may have imagined, because I've said this several times already today, user experience is something that we've learned that we're finding a bunch of new things about. So I want to give a couple of examples that we've seen that have been in this new realm of defects that we found using AI techniques that really may not have been available in the past. So this first one is what we consider a half modal. So it's a half screen modal that would appear that different times in the application we might want to show this little modal. Now in the testing we're looking at this going, great. But what the problem is the test case has an actionable item in there. And that actionable item ends up being something that was not viewable on the screen. You had to scroll to it. Now, if you look over here, I have no means to scroll. There's there's no visual cue. In fact, it just happened to be a perfect paragraph end. It's not like I had a partial word. There was no cue to show me that this was going to scroll. Some of you might think, well, that's being awfully nitpicky. But let's think about our users. Think about our user experience. There was no way to see that. Traditional automation, any traditional automation I've done would have just said, well, there's a button that has a particular label, value, property. I'm just going to click it. Doesn't necessarily mean that it was rendered for the most part. Are there tricks and techniques and immense amount of code you can do to do that? Sure, but nothing overly easy from what I've seen. Now we had the need to scroll, the swipe to do that. We actually had a double failure here. Our automation script that says click the button using AI techniques, so basically, I'll put it in light context, click the button that has the term track health extras balance, it failed. And it failed saying no such button existed. Because remember, this here is the screen that we saw. That's the screen that we were interacting with. Nowhere in there did we give it instruction to scroll, swipe, or anything like that. So it failed saying no such button existed. Our visual validation also failed because it was expecting to have a button, and it basically would show us that, well, I'm expecting a button and I saw no button. As you can imagine, taller phones, this test passed on. Shorter phones, the test failed on because, that would have been available. And the screens, the trending from the taller phones, when compared to the smaller phones, said, oops, I was supposed to have a button. Don't see it. Our functional automation that also said, click on the button, said, there's no button here. I don't know what you want me to do. So this is one example of a defect that we're finding. Again, I'm talking about these defects more to kind of demonstrate that not just savings of, hey, we're doing some nifty cool thing, yay for us, but we're also able to have it benefit us in brand new ways. Got a couple more. Another one here might be obvious to some or not, and that's where we have a text field where the text just didn't fit and it decided to wrap itself in a very sad or interesting way, depending on how you think about it. I do want to point out one thing. As we're going through each of these were found early in pre-production, and it helped us avoid bad experiences or potentially embarrassment when something got to prod. So great things, all huge positives on our end. Here's an example where, from my experience with traditional automation, if we said check the plan name and make sure it says, gosh, I can't even read it, something Medicare, it would have passed. It would have said the value of that field is Medicare. Yay. Adding in visual validation and or AI object recognition with computer vision OCR, it would have either said, given this particular object or given the value that follows below plan, it's either, if we said seed it with the expected value, or if we said give me the value, neither would pass because the rendered side of this is gobbledygook. It's illegible text. And it's, again, another really great new classification of defect that we found. It wasn't intended to be that way, and it just happened. Another one, this one's not a horrible defect, but more just something observed and found. And this was actually a positive thing. It was actually an expected change that somehow just slipped through the requirements, and that we branded the pop-up call screen thingy. And it was something that was detected. Super easy to do with visual validation. Would have been pretty much a pain in the rear to do with other stuff. And I have one last example, and that's this one here where you have style breakage. I'm sure everybody has seen some form of style breakage. The most famous is every Black Friday, certain testers will publish screenshots of unnamed large corporations, won't point fingers because it happens to the best of us, unnamed large corporations and how their page failed to deliver styles or rendered this or that or the other thing, and I had a barely usable, unfunctional, and sad-looking page. Well, in pre-production, that happened to us. The styling didn't load. I mean, it's still factual. It still gives the right detail to the user that when they went to do this link coverage action, that it just didn't work out. But we're able to go above and beyond and to say, oh, wait a minute here. Functionally, it worked, but visually, this would have only been caught by visual validation. It says, this is just not the layout. This is just not the visual representation that I've known for the screen, and this is indeed an error. This was a negative test that we did. It's not that we uncovered an error in a test. This is we drove for an error to drive the error checking, and we would have functionally passed. Yes, it says invalid details entered. It gave us the appropriate code that we were expecting, and it told them what to do. Check your information, which would have been below. But what that functional test wouldn't have done that visual validation does in addition, which has been a big bonus for us, is it helps check the look and feel, which was just wonderful. So there's just a couple of examples of the kind of things that we're finding now, just a whole new world of things. So I'd like to kind of wrap up and kind of bring everything together by just talking a little bit about where we've been and where we think we're going. So we started off, I personally started off going, this just is not the boat for me. To saying, I want a seat on that boat. I want to come along for an AI journey, and I want to have AI help me. We think about what does test automation do? It provides efficiencies. In test automation, we should be, and we frequently are, creating abstractions to make it so we have more centralized code, so we have easier use of function and just all the different things abstraction do. AI is a form of abstraction. Sure, am I writing all the AI? No, but I'm allowing more intelligent, appropriate individuals who understand the meat and potatoes, the guts of AI, to do that authoring and to prepare it for us and to allow us to leverage it. To also extend it, to maybe do some training to the AI or to provide details to the AI engine to help it work better for us. So we're getting an immense amount of benefit there. Visual validation is, that's the functional side. Visual validation is just grand. If and when and where the rendered look and feel, the behavior, maybe not behavior, more look and feel, and just your image is important to you. Obviously, it only has certain capabilities, and I know I'm talking mostly on the visual side, but that's what our users are doing. They're interacting with a lot of user interfaces, whether it be web, mobile, or other. In our case, again, the immediate need was, gosh, we got this mobile thing. Please help us tackle it. Let us keep up with the pace of change, and let us not have a nightmare to go down. The visual validation has been just grand for us there. Now, kind of going a little forward, I'm starting to see the lines gray between sending very specific commands to AI and saying there's going to be a day where NLP, natural language processing, the ability to understand a sentence structure and interpret it into commands for AI is there. There's plenty of organizations and companies that have either prototypes of it, fully functional, maybe works on happy path, but overly continually evolving techniques that are going to help us out and make it so our testing is easier and better. So you might think, and I didn't make a slide for this, but you might think, whoa, you're going to be out of a job soon unless you're writing that software. I don't believe so. I think there's a place for us testers, both in being innovative and leveraging tools like this. Getting the work done for our companies in a faster, more efficient manner. I also feel, I'm in the healthcare space. I don't expect an AI engine anytime soon to be able to understand every single thing that we're doing. So there's still going to be abstractions that we can create. There's still going to be ways for us to write, maybe it's writing interpreters. I don't know what it's going to be, but there's still going to be ways for us to continue to feed and contribute to that engine. Another thing I really didn't talk about, and I'm sorry about it, but it's, when adopting AI, you don't have to go whole hog. You could just say one of two things. Here's our most important interfaces. Let's adopt AI there. You can also say, here's the interfaces that are just changing all the time. Can it get better? You can do a mixed mode where you have some AI and some traditional. Most tooling should allow for both to coexist, for you to contribute AI things and or traditional, or at least provide a handoff between two sets of scripts. Will there be a day someday where I sit in a chair, wear a fancy, helmet, and just think the things and it does it? I don't know, terrifies the heck out of me. I sure hope not. But certainly looking forward, I see so many more advancements. Smaller engines, faster engines, just ways to continually make it so that stuff runs faster and faster and faster, and continue to add efficiencies for us. Again, NLP is something I'm super excited. I want to see where we gray the lines between a manual test case and the automated test case. So with that, I'd like to wrap it up. We'll talk about things, open up for questions. I am Chris Trimper, and I am an AI convert. And I welcome each of you to go along your own personal journeys to see if you can become AI converts as well.
Thanks again for your automation awesomeness. The links to everything of value we covered in this episode, head on over to testguild.com/A423. And while you're there, make sure to click on the Try for Free Today link under the exclusive sponsor section to learn all about Sauce Lab's awesome products and services. And if the show has helped you in any way, why not rate it and review it in iTunes? Reviews really help in the rankings of the show, and I read each and every one of them. So that's it for this episode of the Test Guild Automation Podcast. I'm Joe, and my mission is to help you succeed with creating end-to-end, full-stack automation awesomeness. As always, test everything and keep the good. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Test Guild Automation Podcast. Head on over to testguild.com for full show notes, amazing blog articles, and online testing conferences. Don't forget to subscribe to the Guild to continue your testing journey.